everyone, and welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders Airsoft podcast. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today, I've got Jon with me in the studio, and we're going to talk a little bit about training. It's something we've talked about a lot in the past, how training is important for us for Airsoft to increase our performance. But in particular, we want to talk about a training session that we just had very recently. And this was an open training session where we invited everyone in the community to come train with us for an evening. And we were very graciously donated some field time, so we were able to, have as many people as wanted to come show up and practice with us the real fundamentals and the really basic stuff that we always train. Because I think one of the things that we see a lot, and we've seen a lot, and we've actually done this a lot in the past too, is you train a lot of stuff that's feels really cool to do, like room entry drills and all kinds of confusion drills and stuff like that. And yeah, sure, it's fun to do it, but really it's not super applicable to Airsoft for us anyway. We're not doing room entries every game, or maybe even every skirmish. Do we have to enter a building and clear it out? There's lots of skirmishes where that never ever happens. So we really wanted to focus on what we're calling the basic drills. Really, it's the meat and potatoes of the types of skills that you need to build as an airsofter. And we wanted to introduce those to everyone in the community, show them how they're done, and also show them how you can do them at home. I know we have a video on this that we did a few years back about drills you can do at home, just dry fire drills, and what you can be focusing on to really augment your own skills between games, right? So that was the purpose of a training session. And so Jon was there with us yesterday. And Jon, you recently switched to, not switched, I should say, but you recently picked up a new airsoft gun, right?
Yeah, that is correct. I just recently picked up a AK-74 with a Romanian Dawn grip and outfolding wire stock. So it's it's very old school when it comes to modern looking pieces of kit that we all run.
Yeah, for sure. It's not, the high speed operator kind of thing, but
oh yeah.
That being said, I mean, it's a cool piece of kit. It's not really my style, but I recognize that it is cool.
Yeah.
And for you, I mean, up until you had used, I think it was Stefan's AK for that one game, you had never really used an AK before, right?
That's right. I had used it. I've used an AK twice. I'd say twice actually, being behind it consciously. One was after my motor gave up the ghost and my AR had to bum one off a buddy, and then using Stefan's beautiful LCT or whatever AK, and boy oh boy, fell in love right away.
So yeah, and I think. So it's a cool piece of kit. It's something you wanna use and be effective with on the field. So I think having that training session was timely in the sense that you got an opportunity to start doing some reps of all the things that are, our airsoft fundamentals, right?
Yeah, definitely. I specifically wanted to run my AK for majority of the evening. There's a few drills that we'd done that I knew I wanted to run the AR for, but there's only so much I found that I can do in my own basement, just with regards to getting the core fundamentals of manipulation with the gun, and with the just getting comfortable with it, reloads and manipulating the kit in an aggressive way. I found to be a bit limiting while in my basement because I'm at home. I don't want to get as close to the wall as I would in frontline. And I don't want to ding up my floor with metal AK mags. So I'm not going to be dropping them as aggressively as I would in a game necessarily. So it's, there was aspects that I saw beneficial to do at home. Just taking a magazine out of the gun, putting it back in the gun, just so I know how it feels. And then, just very simple things like that. But that's safe to do at home, I guess, without being too aggressive with it. And then there's just heightened, just But by having that basic fundamental knowledge of manipulating the rifle, putting the safety down, reloading, and I can turn that up to 11 when I get out on the field because I don't care about the AstroTurf that's on the field we play at. It's
Yeah.
dirt, grass, mud. So take the mag out and just chuck it on the ground. Just exercise those fundamentals just in a bit more of a high speed environment.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think there's also a mindset aspect too. Like when you're on the field, you're in a different mind space, I think, than you are when you're at home. Like it takes a lot of energy and focus to really sort of eliminate the surroundings that you're in and focus on the things that you're doing. So like I do ready up drills at home, but I don't feel any sort of stress or anything like that. I'm just going
Yeah.
through the motions and building that muscle memory. But it's going to be different when I'm doing other stuff like cover and stuff, when I'm just using a corner of a door or, a doorway to like the bedroom or whatever. Like, yeah, sure. It's okay practice, but it's very different when you actually do that on the field or in field like conditions, which is why I think being able to do like an open training night at the field that we play at with people in our community is a really good way to work on those things and put people in the right mindset, because not only are you training all this stuff, not only are you focused on what the actual cover that you're going to be using potentially is, but you're put in the situations where you might actually see this in a game like we were doing, and we'll talk about it later. We did some bounding movement from one side of the field to the other. That's things that we've actually done. We've done that in games before, right? So you add that added level of realism for airsoft, right? That you don't really get just from training at home. Especially if you can't do any actual shooting. And most of us, I would say, probably not everyone, but certainly most of us, don't do very much like airsoft shooting inside our own houses, right? It's just not really going to happen, right?
Yeah, unless you want a couple BB holes in your wall.
Yeah, I mean, you might do it accidentally, but you're not putting 300 rounds throughout your house, right? Unless you have some sort of like range built in something. But most of us are not doing that at home. So you're not getting that sort of quote unquote live fire, because it's obviously not real bullets, but like live fire training, you're not going to get at home. So for us to be able to do that at frontline, at the field we play on, was really important. And before we get into too much like the further details of the actual training, one thing I really want to talk about, and it's core, it's foundational to the reason why we have an airsoft channel and we're growing an airsoft community to talk about airsoft, which is the knowledge transfer piece, right? So I've been playing airsoft for over 15 years. I know, John, you must be like pushing 10 or probably a little bit more than that. I know Chris, Cal, Pat, all over 10 years. And that's not to flex on anyone listening and trying to tell them it's like, oh, we've been playing airsoft so long, but 15 years is a long time.
It is,
and
yeah.
I've made a lot of mistakes. And there's a lot of things that I've done that I could have been doing way better, way sooner, by virtue of the fact that I've been playing so long. And a good example of this is offside shooting. I was playing a full 10 years of airsoft before I'd ever learned to do any offside shooting. So when I tell people that, yeah, I've been playing airsoft for 15 years or whatever, the point of that is to say, I want the people listening to be able to learn from my mistakes faster than it took me to actually learn how to get over them. So if you listen to some of the stuff that we did, and I think, without doing too much name dropping, Glick on the Storm Riders Discord is a really good example of how you can learn from people and then apply that before you even dive into something. Glick was doing ready ups before he even played his first airsoft game, right? And he started playing airsoft at a proficiency level that I myself probably didn't reach for my first 5 years playing, I'm going to say, maybe even longer than that, by virtue of the fact that, you're absorbing this knowledge. And I have never, and nobody on the team has ever shied away from sharing all of our knowledge with people. And in some cases, and you sometimes see this with a bit, more, I think about like old, like seedy martial arts, like dojos, where the trainer, the sensei, would hold all this knowledge and would only, give you out little bits by little bits, always keeping themselves better than everybody else. And that's totally not at all our mentality. We want to get out there. We want to share as much as we can. And so in doing that, the people in our community, everyone gets better. And when they get better, you know what happens? We get better, right?
Yep. It's all fun and games to dunk on some rentals, but like give me a bit of a challenge, you know? So that's where the merit comes in from sharing the knowledge. So people that have maybe played like 4 years, they've developed their own habits. But now by the introduce to, I mean, this is just echoing what you're saying. You're allowing people into like our realm of how we see and do things, and now they're going to take what they've learned from us, incorporate that into their habits, and they're going to ultimately be better.
Hmm.
And that's because they're better, and they're going to dunk on us even more. So we got to be even, we got to step it up.
Totally. And I mean, even yesterday we had one of the guys from the community whose name is Matt, and he's really, really good. And
Yeah.
people were saying, oh my God, you're making Matt even more dangerous. And I'm like, good, bring it on.
Yeah.
Because the more he dunks on me, the better I'm going to be forced to become in order to keep up with him, which is
Yep.
excellent. That's exactly what we're looking for. And like you said, like it's all fun and games if you're just going out there and crushing all the time, but that's no fun for. It's not. Eventually, it loses its luster for you, and it's
Yeah.
not certainly not fun for the other people who you're trying to bring into the community. So it's for our money, it's a much better use of our time to try and take all these people who want to learn airsoft and join the community and be like, hey guys, come learn from us. And at the end of the day, I mean, you don't have to listen to anything that we say, really. You can come and you can pay attention and, be respectful, but then form your own opinions and say, you know what, that's these guys, what they're saying is bunk and I don't want to listen to it. That's
Hmm.
totally cool. But really the purpose for us is to share that knowledge and spread it as much as we can. Because as I've said many times on the podcast before, and I said it yesterday as well, the rising tide lifts all boats. If one person gets better and the community gets better, everyone gets better as a consequence of that. And that's why these sort of open training sessions are a great way to build a community where people are sharing rather than trying to sort of stick to their own stuff. So that was a big part of why we would do a session like that. But the other piece is we think that airsoft practice is important, right? You should be practicing your fundamental skills. You should be working as a team. The only way to do that is to actually get out there.
Yeah. I mean, that's all relative. I mean, you don't have to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but nine chances out of 10, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably someone that wants to get better at airsoft. So like you just incorporate your own habits into the stuff that we've kind of displayed.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, not only is this training like for us and our community, it's, I mean, also for you guys.
Yeah, and we did record lots of video yesterday, and the intent is to create a video of that training so that people can see how a training session, one of our training sessions, is structured, what it is that we work on, what the drills that we work on. And, we don't do very many, I'm going to say like high speed, low drag sort of drills. Like it's all meat and potato stuff. And we'll talk about those drills just in a few moments. So before we dive into the drills, though, the last thing I'll say is when it comes to practicing airsoft, really, that's entirely up to you. Like John, you were saying, like if you don't want to practice, that's totally cool. But if you are going to practice, you might say, well, Phil, I don't have an hour a week to practice. That's fine. Do you have like 10 minutes on any given evening to just pick up your rifle and do 20, 30 ready ups? Like that would be
Yeah.
fine, right? That's value added. That's 20 or 30 ready ups than A, you would have done otherwise, and B, that many people at your field are doing that night, that week, that month, right? So every little bit that you can do adds to, assuming you're, taking the time to practice correctly and, watch your form and correct yourself and all this kind of stuff. It all adds a little bit of value. So it doesn't have to be these big training sessions like we did yesterday. It can certainly be, 15 minutes here, and, it could be an hour a week, an hour every 2 weeks, an hour a month. It's all of that is better than not doing anything, although we do recommend, we've talked about it before, a lot of these skills are perishable, so you should be doing them at least once every couple of weeks. Now, if you're playing once every couple of weeks, then that's great. You're not necessarily going to lose those skills as much, but we would certainly encourage you, if you are listening to this and you're interested in augmenting your own performance, to go at least once every couple of weeks, pick up your rifle, do some ready ups, do some reloads, and sort of keep those skills fresh.
Yeah, completely agree.
So let's talk a little bit about the actual training session that we did. At the start of the session, we started talking about gear, actually. We were like, how we choose gear. I'm curious to get your thoughts on that, because I know your gear has changed, well, I mean, pretty substantially, actually, over the course of the last, let's call it year and a half. That's not to mention, of course, your overall transition from World War II kit to, modern / Falklands kit that you sometimes rock as well.
Yeah. See, I started playing airsoft with Cal back like I don't know, over 10 years ago or whatever, with you and Pat. And I mean, our community was super small, but I knew what I wanted to get out of airsoft at the time. That was all World War II centric.
Hmm.
And you guys, on the other hand, I mean, you were all more modern, SIRAS, like early 2000s type kit. I mean, that's what you found. That's what sparked your interest at that point in time.
Yeah, totally.
And over the course of that transition, I stayed relatively in the past with retrospect to my kit. And you guys were always looking further and further forward in terms of development and modifications and, the general ease of life that modern kit allows you to have.
Hmm.
So as you guys were making these, like, chipping away at the marble stone, you were always like evolving your kit to get the next base of what it is that you're trying to achieve, which is ultimately being proficient on the airsoft field.
Yeah.
So you would ditch your SIRAS in favor of a JPC. You've now ditched your JPC in favor of a chest rig because it makes you more proficient in what you want to get out of airsoft. So what I found was I was stuck quite literally in 1940s kit. So by that time, like, after 6 years of playing with you guys and watching your kit evolve, you were in a good, adequate space to be like, well, I think I want to make the transition to modern kit. And so you had plus 5 years from when I started playing, plus 6 years. So you had 11 years of experience behind you. Whereas I had zero experience, relatively speaking, when it comes to modern kit.
Hmm.
So you were already in a good jumping off point because you've made so many mistakes, you've made so many triumphs that you were able to, like, all right, let's get you situated. First thing you need is a working gun, a radio, BBs, a place to store your magazine, and some woodland kit. So right out of the gate, I had such an advantage over where you were, and it's going back to that kind of Glick story where he watched what we put out and what others have put out, and we're engaged in our community, and he found that him doing the stuff that we kind of discuss in our videos gave him an edge. And I kind of see myself in that similar position, that looking at it in this perspective, being like, I had the advantage of all your failures behind you guys to inform me to when it comes to getting kit and stuff. Because I mean, mentality wise, I'd be like, I'm just going to get whatever's cheap. And
Hmm.
believe it or not, SIRAS is an old like Condor kit is pretty cheap, and it does the same stuff that you guys were doing 6 years prior. So like I had the added benefit of all you, like, just having your knowledge there, and there was nothing being held back. It's what you viewed at the time was like, this is what I deemed best for what I think you would adapt to in a play style situation.
Right. And so that's certainly one piece, but then the other piece is, so now you have to learn how to use all this stuff, right?
Yeah,
And that's where a lot of these, well, I mean, obviously playing games, but like this is where a lot of these drills help shake that out a bit, right?
definitely. So I like going into the modern kit, like I knew I've definitely seen a lot of movies about modern like army units and stuff and special forces. So like I knew like the very tip of the iceberg in terms of, oh, this is how you hold an AR-15 style rifle. They always have their fire selector toggle between safe and semi. So like I knew going into it, like there were certain aspects that like were already kind of ingrained in myself. So like even if I wasn't necessarily running the kit, I knew about it and it was in the back of my mind. So when it came time to actually pick up that style of kit, I had that fundamental knowledge. Then slowly incorporating the play styles, the ready ups, the offside transitions, the incorporation of a sling,
Hmm.
like all these little aspects into like my overall playing style. I mean, I don't think it would have been possible to be at this level that I am right now. And I think I'm at a pretty proficient stage of my airsoft career. And I can only get better if I just keep on top of what I've already been learning for the past 4 or 5 years that I've been running with you guys or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, even in that time, I think what we've trained has also changed, right? In the training sessions, I remember like the
Oh
one
yeah,
of the first training sessions that you came to, like we tried to put you in a plate carrier and stuff, and it was like way too big for you. And the drills we were
yeah,
doing there then were like very much like sidearm centric and all this kind of stuff.
yeah. That I was just about to say that, like that. We were so like it seems like it was so. My recollection of it was ready ups, mag changes, pistol transitions.
Yeah,
Those were like the three fundamentals that we were harping on to know. And like I knew myself, and I was like, I don't really see the use and need of having a sidearm on my person during an airsoft game, because I've had a 1911 for my American kit and I've never once used it.
hmm
Is that likely due to the fact it's not really designed to be hauled out in a pinch? Likely, but I mean, I had already formed that interpretation of I don't use a pistol, therefore I don't need the pistol. I can just train on other aspects to make myself even better.
right.
Instead of what, because I remember I put on someone's belt and I think Pat or someone, maybe you gave me your sidearm to do some transitions or pistol draws and stuff. And I'm like, sure, this is sick, but like, this is not practical for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think since then, our training has really gravitated away from a lot of the stuff that is probably less practical, right? We said this to one of the first things we talked about with the group yesterday was explaining that, there's a lot of drills that we've done in the past that might have felt really cool. But ultimately, if you think about how many times does that actually happen to you in an airsoft game, it's really not that many. So free and pistol transitions are a great example of that. We used to train those all the time. I used to train them at home with a timer, getting faster and faster, drawing my pistol, and then all that kind of stuff. And it's fun and it's something you certainly can do. But at the end of the day, when I ask myself how many times in a time critical situation have I had to draw my pistol in an airsoft game, that number, I mean, in total, in all my years playing, I can count them, I'm pretty sure, on one hand. Much more frequently, I have to draw my pistol because I'm going into a building, for example, and I don't want to shoot people up close with my rifle, or it gives me better like cornering or whatever. But like in all of those situations, I have time and opportunity to put my main rifle away and grab my secondary and draw it out. Like it doesn't take me
Yeah.
like a minute to do it. I can still it's still pretty quick, but I have lots of time to do it. It's never a rush. So if that never happens, if it happens less than, let's say, 10% of the time even, why am I spending over 50% of my training time on that particular drill? It just makes no sense.
Yeah, and I was there like I don't even have a pistol. I don't have a belt. I just have like a couple condor pouches for my my rifle,
Yeah.
and I don't understand why I'm doing this. But like you're saying, you're making a conscious effort when entering a building. You're doing so with the intention of using your pistol to do so.
Yeah.
So like you're. I mean, I know for myself, I've gotten one kill with a pistol in all the years I've spent playing, and I've never once thought this is I should take out my pistol here, or someone's about to rush me or something, and I don't want to smoke them from close range with my AR or something. I'm going to shift to a secondary. Never once have really crossed my mind, and I think something that we're going to talk about later is like with the offside transitions and the bumps.
Yeah.
That like proper fundamental knowledge of how to manipulate your rifle in a time critical situation and utilizing cover to your advantage and is much quicker than swapping to a sidearm.
Yeah, and point of fact, like I think about a game that we played several weeks ago now, but I remember you and I were squaring off against each other, and you came around the church, and I guess you didn't see me right away, and I zipped you with the rifle. Like I shot you probably 3 or 4 times. I was really close. Like I was close enough that normally I would have probably preferred to shoot you with my sidearm. But
yeah, you're within 20 feet. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't transition to my sidearm because who's got time for that? Like you're right
exactly.
there. My first thought is I got to plug this dude, which I did, and then just carry on. That in those situations, you're never going to draw your sidearm. It's just not going to happen.
No.
So why would you train as though you're going to do that if in reality your muscle memory is not going to happen? right? And it really, it's not a good. I personally don't believe that it would have been proper fundamentals to do that anyway, because now I have a sidearm in my hand, but really my engagements aren't going to be that close.
Well, yeah, it's also like on that one example, like you didn't know it was around the corner of the building.
Hmm.
So who's to say that there wasn't three other dudes perched up, hiding, waiting to get the
Exactly.
drop on you?
Yeah, exactly.
I think there is merit to looking at and doing pistol transitions for a field that has a lot of CQC type environments. Like if we had a building or something, if there was an abandoned building that was our local field, absolutely I would have a sidearm and I would be practicing my pistol transitions
Hmm.
day in and day out, just because that's the field that we play on, and therefore my perspective of the game would shift. Whereas we play in the woods and a couple plywood buildings, so like there's really no justification for having a pistol in my eyes. I mean, would I like to have a Glock? You bet. They're so sick. But I mean, I just don't see the use for one right now based off the field I play at and
Hmm.
my way of my play style.
Yeah, and I mean, to be completely honest, like I'm perfectly fine carrying one, but one of the things we asked last night at the training was how many of you actually have a sidearm that you're carrying that you would actually be using on the field, and about half of the people did. So we didn't actually spend any time really doing anything with sidearms because we don't want to disadvantage, number one, all the people who showed up who uh, can't actually do these drills because they don't have the right equipment, right? So that's an open training
Mm-hmm.
night. That's fine. Similarly, we didn't do any grenade work because I was the only one carrying grenades, so that's fine.
Yeah.
But that should also tell you if half the people are showing up to the field and they don't carry a sidearm, then maybe they're not an essential piece of kit, and really they aren't, right? I carry one and I like to carry one because it gives me sometimes that flexibility. But you know what? If I didn't have one, I have all the personal skills I need to go in that building without one. Right? I don't
Yep.
need it to go into that building. I just like to because I don't want to be shooting people up close. But if I had no choice, right? If I didn't have my sidearm, let's say it fell out of my holster, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm not going in there. It's like it's
Yeah.
happening. It's just now you're just going to have a bit of a bigger welt as a result. So in any event, I think we talked a lot about sort of the why and the how around the training, but I want to talk a bit more specifically about what we did do yesterday. So we started the night with ready ups, right? Just standard ready up drills from the strong side. We then did ready ups from your off side, and for certain people, it's going to be really uncomfortable because they've either not spent a whole lot of time or in some cases spent no time at all shooting offside. But for us, for our money, it's an absolutely critical skill to have. So every time that we do drills, we always do whatever the drill is on our strong side, and we do whatever the drill is on our offside or our other strong side, depending on how you like to phrase it. Right? Some people say it's your weapon side, your reactive side, your strong side, your weak side, whatever you want to call it. Whatever your strong side is, we do the drills with one and then we do the drills with the other. And it's really important because, especially in airsoft, where cover utilization and manipulating your airsoft rifle around pieces of cover is so, so, so important. You have to be able to shoot from your offside. It's absolutely critical. And it's funny, but if you'd asked me that, 10 years ago, I would have said, meh, whatever, right? But now, knowing what I know and having done the training that we've done, it's an absolutely fundamental skill. You need to do it. And so for our money, for our training, we always incorporate the offside shooting. And for some people, as I said, it's the first time or one of the first times that they've actually ever done that before. But
Yep.
as you saw, I mean, it pays dividends pretty quick. You don't need to do it a whole lot to get exponentially
Oh
better
yeah.
at it.
Yep. I mean, just a couple times, like if you're going to train every twice a month, just you don't even if you don't have enough time to do it one time. I mean, once a month is proficient enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think just if you do it enough reps in that one, say you do an hour, if you dedicate 45 minutes to doing it, I think that's a adequate amount of time to be at least familiar with it, so you just don't suck. You're not a complete novice at it
Mm-hmm.
when it comes time to for game time, and you're on a pinch, and the only way you're going to get an accurate shot off is by bumping or transitioning or whatever.
Yeah.
It's good to have that 45 minutes or 230 minutes behind you.
Yeah, for sure. And for us, for all the drills that we did, It incorporates and starts with the ready up because again, we've talked about this before many times, but the ready up is the bread and butter of what you do on the airsoft field. I mean, 99% of the time, your rifle is going to be in some sort of like high ready position, ready to engage, and you're going to bring your rifle up on target. You're going to acquire a sight picture and you squeeze a trigger. Regardless of whether that's an AR, an AK, a P19, MP5, whatever, you're going to be doing that a lot, right? That's basically snap shooting. And
Yep.
you need to be able to do that. And so for us, whenever we do a drill, it's always going to be a ready up to start it, right? So we did just regular ready ups, just starting up, just ready up, shoot back down for a bit. Then we did shoulder transitions where we would shoot, transition shoulders, shoot. But again, it's a ready up. So it's like ready up, shoot, transition, ready up, shoot, transition, ready up, shoot, transition, so on. Then we did reloads and it was the same thing. It was ready up, reload, ready up, right? And again, you're building all of these reps every time. So by the end of the night, I mean, if you've done each drill, let's say, 10 times, depending on how many drills you've done, you might have done 50 to 100 ready ups that night. Well, that's great. That's excellent, right? And you can do all of that in the span of, well, we had a lot of different lines because we had many different shooters and we could only had 3 at a time. But if you're doing this at home by yourself, I mean, in a span of an hour, you can do a lot of ready ups.
No, I mean, the sky's your limit when it comes to your own time.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I know we all run optics.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people run optics as well, but there's a lot of people that don't run optics. Like I found myself with running my AK that doesn't have has iron sights. And I found while doing my ready ups in my basement, I was like, I think this is more valuable now because it's not just simply looking at a dot and putting that behind something. It's ready up, get ready, think about what you're about to do, which is once I get my cheek weld, I'm actually going to acquire a proper sight picture, making sure that the front post is in line with the rear aperture.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to be able to hit something accurately. So I would choose some distinct feature on my wall. Think about the steps in order to do it really slow. And then just keep doing that, and slowly but surely I'll incorporate faster times into it. And just making sure the fundamental thing is, I don't want anyone to think like, oh, I don't have a red dot sight, therefore I can't do ready ups.
Totally. Yeah.
And if you have irons, it's even more important to do ready ups. Do them slow first, build up the muscle memory, make sure you're acquiring that sight picture. And, a lot of iron sights if you're using an AK, they're very dark. They're this color of the metal. So if you're worried about that, maybe it might be worth your time and effort to paint on a little white stripe on the front barely corn sight, just so you can see something and acquire some sort of a sight picture.
Yeah, for sure.
So I found that if my red dot went down on my FAL, well, the iron sights are hard to use, therefore I have to be proficient with them. And getting an accurate sight picture with that, I found drawing a white line with white paint on the front sight was a good solution to that problem.
Totally. And you raise an excellent point again, which is that part of doing these drills and the reason that we practice is because it helps us to understand the limitations of the kit that we're using, right? So you start doing ready ups with your AK and you're like, wow, I can't see these sights on a dark target because there's no dot on the front sight post. Or you're doing reloads and you're like, man, I can't reach the mags on the other side of my body. Oh, that's a problem. Right. Yep. So for example, last night we were doing reloads and I had 3 mags in my front and I had 2 mags in my my taco pouch on my left side, which is great when I'm just doing regular reloads, but I'm doing offside reloads. I got to reach across my body. Now I can reach them because I put the pouch there specifically because I can reach them. But if it had been further back, for example, or in a different position, I might not have been able to reach them. Right? So then you figure out, wow, okay, so these are only accessible in one position. Is that really what I want? Or you start doing drills with pieces of kit that you're familiar with, but you do them in a different way. And suddenly you realize, oh, wow, this is actually hampering what I'm doing. Maybe I need to change stuff around and figure it out. And so last night Cal was showing up Cal was showing us how to do bumping the shoulder, right? Instead of doing a full transition, you just shoulder bump so you can shoot from your offside. And my sling kept getting caught, and it was just a bad time for me because it's my first time ever doing it. So naturally, I'm not going to be great at it, which is okay. But I'm starting to see limitations of my kit. And I'm like, okay, so if I'm going to do this, I need to set up my kit differently or make some tweaks. And that's a whole part of practice as well, right? You get accustomed to all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I don't know if you want to discuss the bumping right now,
Yeah,
but
might as well.
it was really interesting. Like there was two camps when it comes to bump shooting. I don't like I found that there was the camp that you and Chris kind of fell into right away, and there's a camp that Cal and myself fell into. And it's when you're in the pinch of doing a shoulder bump, it's acquiring a sight picture is the most important thing when doing the shoulder bump. What do you think?
So personally, I don't feel good about shooting my rifle if I'm not behind the sights. That's just me.
That's fair.
If I can't see the dot, for example, that to me is a problem because I don't really know exactly where my muzzle is pointing, right? That's the bottom line for me. But I also understand what you're saying, John, which is like, do you need a good sight picture to like walk your BBs onto the target if it's a time critical situation?
That's kind of what I was thinking. That was kind of like the mentality behind it that I thought just getting BBs down range is the most important thing in that type of situation where someone's like rushing you.
Yeah.
And you have to react like you don't have enough time to transition. You don't have enough time to draw a sidearm. It's either you step behind the available cover and bump the rifle or bump the AEG or whatever.
Yeah.
Just making sure you have BBs your muzzle's pointing in the direction of the threat essentially. And the reason why I think that is if I can get BBs down there before they crest that corner, that might deter them from taking it so aggressively.
Yeah, totally.
Therefore, I can get myself in a more comfortable shooting position where for me, I can either do one of two things. I can walk the BBs on if it's an engagement over a bit of range, or I can just merely suppress and then buy myself a little bit of time because of the suppression.
Yeah.
That I can actually get into a better shooting position where I'm not utilizing the bump. The bump, I think, is just the be all end all. It's the quick and dirty way of just getting BBs down range.
Yeah. So we did a really good drill last night where we would approach a corner of a building shooting on our strong side, and we would fire a couple of shots at a target that we had set up. And then the person running the drill would prompt us, and we would basically have to pivot, bump the shoulder on our rifle, and then get on the other side of the cover, so we're shooting offside, like basically in a fraction of a second, and start shooting at a second target. And this was to simulate basically you just shot an enemy player, but now his buddy is rushing you from your left side, so you got to get in cover real quick. And that really, I think, for me, like how you sometimes say, like it separated the men from the boys, right? Because yeah. Cal was really good at doing that. I had never done anything like that before, and immediately it was like, oh my god, I am so bad at this. Like I'm absolutely horrible. But it was a really effective drill. Yeah.
One of the funny things was when someone would say contact left or contact, everybody would just transition.
Yeah.
They would just do the normal transition as if everything was normal. There was such a separation between the actual intended drill and what our perception of it was and that's purely just because of two things: instinct and stress. Yeah. So you're stressed, and therefore you fall back on your instincts, which is just to transition normally.
Which, let's be fair, is not a bad instinct, but is not the point of the drill.
Not.
Yeah.
No, it was funny to see like that. I did it, you did it, Chris did it.
Yeah.
I think Kosh did it a few times, and like it was just funny because it shows what we put priority on in a stressful situation.
Yeah. But so it was a great drill. And I think, to peg onto this, I think you mentioned earlier about like the different camps, and it's interesting because I would have said, even up until yesterday, really, I'm like, you know what? I don't bump. That's not for me. I just transition. Right. And really, by doing that, I'm kind of shortchanging myself, right? If I'm not willing to explore another potential avenue, that's basically like someone saying, "Oh, well, I've heard of screwdrivers, but I don't really like them, so I only use a hammer." It's like, okay,
Yeah.
cool, but they're not really the same thing. They might be similar, but really, like, yeah, you can hammer a nail in using the butt of a screwdriver, but that's not really what the purpose of it is, right? And even Cal
Yeah.
was saying, when coming back to airsoft, when you're bumping, yeah, when you bump, you probably don't want to stay in that position for a really long time. It's going to be harder for you to do your reloads and all this kind of stuff. Transitioning in certain cases is for the long term is better. But he said, in most airsoft engagement, he just bumps quickly, takes a couple shots, goes back to what he was doing before. And so it's really two different tools for your toolkit, and you have to be open to that. And we talked about this at training as well. Like, if you're not willing to explore what else is out there in terms of training, you might not recognize things that make you a better player for years and years to come. So, I mean, I could have been bumping 3 years ago and I haven't really tried, and I'm only I'm on that path of discovery now, many years onwards, right? So hopefully, if you listen to this, you're like, oh, you had sworn off bumping shoulders, maybe you give it a go, because that might just be for you. Now, at the end of the day, now that I've done this drill 3 times, does that mean I'm going to be good at bumping next time we go to the field? No. And does it mean I'm going to bump next time we play? Probably not. I need a lot of practice before I feel comfortable
Yeah.
with it. But that's okay, right? That's part of that learning. But at least you're on that path, right? And that's the other great thing about these open training nights, is that everyone brings their different perspective. So if you have a better idea or different idea of how to do something, like, we should be willing to listen and learn from each other.
Completely agree. Yeah, I mean, I think it was a kind of a perfect storm for a eureka moment, because I mean, Cal just went up to the target, or up to the wall of the building,
Yeah.
and he just did it literally absolutely perfectly the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And it really set the stage for, like, well, when executed appropriately, this is just a core fundamental skill that every player should have in their wallet.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's a lot of these skills, especially when it comes to new skills, things you haven't done before. Training them once, like we did last night, is not going to make you an expert. It's not even going to make you like a novice. You're still like a nobody, right? You need to put the time in if you want to get better at it. And part of these training sessions are about highlighting, and a lot of our videos are the same way. Like, you watch the video once, you're not going to magically know how to do all this stuff, but it's opening your eyes to what is possible, all the different things that you might not be aware of, showing you, like Cal did yesterday. And I think that was you just said it was like a perfect eureka moment where you're like, wow, that was really well executed and it looked really effective. So that's the kind of stuff that I want to learn how to do, because I want to be able to do it. Now, at the same time, when I was doing it, I was also experiencing, as I was mentioning before, gear that was, my sling was getting in the way, was preventing me from doing it as smoothly as Cal. Those are all things that I'm going to have to work on and work through as I'm trying to pick up this skill as well, right? So that's another aspect of why training is so critical. Because if I just go and put all this kit on and then I go to the field, I'm going to start bumping shoulders, it's just not going to work. And I'm just going to end up getting shot and frustrated and just not do it anymore. You need to learn it a bit in the controlled environment before you take it out to the field and try it out, right?
Yeah, and I think bumping is one of those skills where I think that should take priority in terms of, if you're already proficient at doing shoulder transitions, maybe lay off the shoulder transitions the next time you sit or you stand up to do some drills with yourself. Because I think the biggest thing, and I alluded to it earlier, it's the instinctual thing for us to do is transition. Mm-hmm. So by putting the kibosh on that for a little bit and just saying, no, we're not going to transition today. We're going to bump. We're going to bump and ready up. And that's what we're going to do. Just incorporate that bump into your next training regimen, as opposed to that, because you have to, I think, in order to get proficient at it, you have to make it so it's an instinctual reaction. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily an instinctual reaction, but it's something that, like, it's there, and you just have to think about, okay, I'm not going to do A, I'm going to do B.
Yeah.
And then it's an instinctual reaction.
And like you were just saying, it's also about knowing, like, what your own personal curriculum is, right? You're trying to get better. Like, if you are already proficient at doing your ready ups and you're already proficient at doing transitions, we're not saying that you don't do them. right? It's like you never get to a point where you're like, oh yeah, I'm so good, I don't need to do these anymore. No, you
Yeah.
still need to do them. But there's a point where you're like, well, today I'm not going to practice whatever. Today I want to focus on bumping. And so that's what you work on, right? You work on getting that better. Does that mean you never go back to transitions? No. Next time you do transitions and bumps. Maybe you do ready ups and bumps, right? And you have to incorporate all of these things. But like really the
Yeah.
meat and potatoes of your training has to be those critical things that you are going to need to fall back on in a game, because we talked about it. We've talked about it in previous videos. You mentioned last night. What we're trying to get to is a point where we are not thinking about ourselves and manipulating our kit and our AEGs or whatever airsoft guns we're using. All we're focused on is what's going on the field, where people are moving, looking at our situation awareness, understanding what are the next plays that we need to make, what is the, the next obstacle that we need to knock down, what's our next objective, whatever. And it's hard to do that when you're trying to juggle all of that stuff as well as all of the personal skill stuff. All the stuff about, oh, well, that piece of cover, I don't know if I can take that because I got to shoot offside and I'm not really good at that. No, like all of that should come naturally, because piece of cover,
Yep.
go, move. All right, I'm shooting offside because the guy's to my offside. Perfect, great, good. And then I get here, oh, his buddy's coming. All right, quickly bump shoulders, whatever, re-engage. Like all that stuff should be natural. And the stuff that you should be focused on is that's where Buddy is. That's where his friend is. He's shooting at me from there. I need to go here. I need to call a friend over to me. And like I said, you can't manage all of that at the same time. It's just not possible. So
That's right.
your fundamental skill sets need to be the things that you work on during your own practice time, whether it's by yourself or in a larger team setting. So yesterday, I mean, we probably spent, I'm gonna say maybe at least an hour and a half on just the personal skills drills, right? Working as a group. Now, we were cycling through, so not everyone was shooting all the time, but you're working as a group through all of that stuff. Before we even moved into like the buddy stuff, right? And the buddy team movements and stuff, which that is the purpose of that for us was a bit different, right? It's about getting accustomed to working with other people and communicating clearly and concisely. And I know you threw a little bit of a curveball at me while we were doing those drills, but I don't, I'm not mad at you for it, because I think it does illustrate a thing that does happen to all of us when we practice, which is that you get really focused in so much on the what you're doing that you sort of forget the why and the how.
Yeah, the specific
Yeah,
parameters around it kind of go
exactly.
to the wayside. For example, the thing I threw at you was we were leaving the church and we had one target, and I said, "Where's the contact fill?" After you were engaging. By that time, you were already completely centrally focused on that one target. I mean, part of that was because you definitely knew that was the only threat because it was a stage simulation. But for me, the most important thing when moving with you or moving with anybody or communicating with anyone or playing with anyone is communication and
Mm-hmm.
providing accurate information to the people that are going to benefit from the most in the moment. So you were getting all caught up on your words and stuff. He's look by the building on the right, and I was like, okay, good, got it. I'm gonna move.
Yeah.
And it's a reason. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but every time we do a bounding movement, you and I always make sure to say, even if you move past and I know you're set, I can hear your rifle. I need the auditory cue to be like, okay, he's set.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something like, even if you're not shooting, like I know you're over at the piece of cover by now because I saw you out of the corner of my eye. But the affirmation kind of like of hearing it, or the confirmation of hearing you say that, makes me more confident in my ability to move. And I don't really think I've ever brought it up to you, have I? Like that?
No, not really. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I mean, that's why I always ask, "Are you set?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting. And I think one of the things, just coming back briefly, it's not so much that I was tunnel visioned, but I think, and this is really in my own defense, I recognize, but just, I think what I was doing is something that a lot of people do when they do drills, which you anticipate, right?
yeah,
My expectation was, we're going to do this. I'm going to start shooting. John is going to tell me he's moving. and I'm going to say go or covering or whatever, and then he's going to go. And so I'm anticipating the drill. So what you said wasn't what I was expecting. That's why I was
Yeah.
like just discombobulated and was like, what? Oh, yeah, he's over there by the right or whatever. And
Yeah.
then you went. But a lot of people do that when they do drills. You anticipate what's going to happen, or you don't necessarily put yourself in the right mindset of, I am simulating training. So an example of that also happens when you're doing like shooting like at targets, right? So you shoot your shot and then you just drop your rifle and just go off and do other stuff. But if you were doing that in a game, that's not at all what you would do, right? You shoot
Yeah.
the target and then your rifle is still up and you're waiting. You're waiting for another target. You're waiting whatever. So when you're training, why are you doing that? It's just because you're anticipating the drill, right? So
Yeah.
that's totally what happened. But I think it's what's interesting that you just mentioned is this sort of like you need the auditory cue. And I've noticed you do that before. Because from my perspective, I'm going and I'm doing this drill and I'm like, when I start shooting, John can hear I'm shooting, so he doesn't need that auditory cue. And I think if we were in a game situation, it might be a little bit different. You might not
Hmm.
hesitate quite as much, especially if we were like trying to go, right? It's always going to be a little bit different. But I'd
Yeah.
say 80% of the time when we've been playing together, thinking back on it, I've noticed you do that. You're like, hey, are you set? And it's like, yeah, I'm good, right?
Yeah. No, it's just one of those things. It's for me, it's a quality of life thing. It's making sure that it's also security as well. Like you've made your move and you're safe.
Yeah.
You didn't fall down, didn't hurt yourself, you didn't get schwacked.
Yeah.
So for me, that it puts a bit of comfort in my mind. So like the field was clear for you to move, and now you're safe.
Hmm.
And now it's my turn to move. And so another thing, I don't really know if you've noticed, but like I always call where the contact is before I say contact, and then I immediately follow that up with where and if applicable who.
Hmm.
Because like when I took point on that drill, the first thing I did was I put fire down and I said one contact, second building on the right. And you said, okay. And I said, move. And you said moving. It was good move, good fire communication there. And then you said threat eliminated. So that gave me the security that I needed to make sure that our left was clear. The paper target was dead. It wasn't going to come up and schwack us.
It was a really
And
good
then-
shot, dude. It was a really good
Oh
shot.
yeah. Oh yeah. BB went straight through.
Yeah.
And then we had the second target up, and I took the corner. And I said, all right, contact Center Village, past the saloon or whatever the building was.
Yeah.
And you said, okay. I said, move. You said moving, and the drill proceeded as normal. And then you took that threat, or I don't know, because I didn't know how the drill was. I was focused on myself and you, and I just didn't really pay much attention to it. It's something I need to work on a bit more, I think.
Hmm.
And then we took the last piece of cover, and I said threat, far side, extreme end of the field. And these are things that I've said scattered throughout my vocabulary when gaming. So it's field specific. It's stuff that I know you would understand. And it's something I've really made a conscious effort over the past, like I would say 2 years, to be really concise with my communication and give adequate, tight feedback to where just to purely with the respect of trying to make sure everybody's on the same plane in terms of like situational awareness.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think if I was to offer some criticism or constructive criticism to you and Chris and Kosh and Kirby and all these other players that play with us, is just, for me, I'm a big auditory guy. Just, I like the security of knowing where people are as soon as, as soon as you see them. You've gotten a lot better. I've noticed over the past season, you've been a lot more like communicative when it comes to where your targets are.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never really addressed it to you, and this is like the first time I'm doing it. And I don't want you to take it the wrong way, which I know you won't, but like, I think that's the next step for us in terms of buddy movement. Because I think we have a movement in a really good locked in space just because we play so often together.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Usually you and I that like play every week, and it's what's the next step? We know how to bound. We know how to move. What's the next step for us?
Yeah. So, and I appreciate that feedback. Like, I think that's totally fair. I think as well, the main reason that we do buddy movement especially during these open training sort of sessions, is that we need to introduce other people to the concept of communicating with other people, because
Yeah.
it's not always going to be you and me playing together. In fact, sometimes it's you versus me. Sometimes I might be there and you're not, and vice versa, right? So we
Hmm.
need to be able to communicate, and most people are not very good at that, just by virtue of the fact that when you're playing airsoft, you're stressed out, physiologically stressed out. You're not worried too much about talking, but people need to get into this habit of just very clearly and concisely saying, "Hey, I've got you. You can go," or "I'm covering. You move. I'm moving. You cover." Whatever that is, and getting used to that cadence.
Yeah.
And we have done that, I would say, relatively successfully over the years. But that doesn't mean we're not, we don't need to learn anymore. I think you're
Exactly.
raising really good points, which is that, so yeah, can I communicate moving and shooting with you? Absolutely. Could it be better if we were even more concise, even more auditory, even more specific? Cool. Let's add that in, right? And it's not that, we need to do a completely different session. It's the
No.
exact same drill. We're adding a little bit of a layer of, not complexity, but just a little bit of a layer to what we do, right?
And I find for myself, like when I'm doing, you put a good point of like getting out of like the loop just then, and I found that by me hollering where people are, it takes me out of the loop and it allows me to think about what's going on in a bit more real time types like context. You know what I mean? Like I'm able to kind of step away from the stress of it and just
Mm-hmm.
think about communicating where that person is, where that threat is that because it allows me to be more in the moment, I suppose. I don't really know how to describe it. It makes me more aware in the game just to be able to think consciously and make decisions under stress in a clear, concise manner.
Yeah, and I think those are the kinds of things that you can work on when you're playing, but you really start to hammer down when you spend some time actually training them and doing them deliberately in situations where people are not actually shooting at you. And you get accustomed again to that cadence, right?
Yep.
And then the next time you're playing a game, suddenly, hey, you know what? Maybe I can do that, right? Maybe I'm not stressed out right now. I'm gonna take a second to call out the target. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay, no, cool. So I just did that, and now I feel like I'm a bit more aware. I've broken some tunnel vision. Cool.
Yeah.
So, you start that process by practicing it. And it's the exact same thing, in a different way, but with like bumping shoulders. I'm not going to go and bump shoulders the next game we play because I need more practice at it first. But once I've done it, 15, 20, maybe 50 times, I'll be like, okay, next game I play, if there's an opportunity, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Right? I'm going
Yeah.
to try it. I've been practicing it. Now I have a bit of confidence build up. So we're going to give it a shot. It's part of, again, to close the loop on all of this, it's part of why these sort of training sessions are so effective when you're focusing on the right things. Right?
Yeah.
Because these are skills that you will develop, that you will work on and grow and learn new techniques that help you grow even further, that you are then going to turn around and take back to the airsoft field with you, that will make you an even better player than you were before we even started. And I'm just going to close off the episode talking about, just very briefly, about a concept called the 24-hour clone. We talked about this yesterday in the training session. But the idea of the 24-hour clone is that it's like a thought experiment. But basically says, imagine that at the end of every day, a scientist created a perfect clone of you that is an exact copy in every way, with all of your skills, knowledge, expertise, everything is exactly the same. And then at the end of the following day, you have to fight that clone of yourself. Either a physical fight, an intellectual fight, it could be an airsoft fight. It could be, you have to go run a race against them. Whatever it is that are the skills that you're trying to improve, are you able to defeat that clone 24 hours later? In other words, are you focusing on the things that help you improve incrementally, not night and day improvement, but just day over day, getting slightly better one day after the next, so that every single day you're a little bit better than you were the day previous. And then the day after that, you're a little bit better than that again, right? And that's the way that we recommend everyone approach their airsoft practice. It's not going to be these huge sweeping training sessions that are going to make or break your ability to do things on the field. It's that small, consistent, incremental practice of the things that matter to you on the field that will help you be able to eventually defeat that 24-hour clone of yourself. Because at the end of the day, like if your benchmark is you want to be better than everybody else, it's never going to be a thing because there's always going to be someone better than you, right?
Yep.
But if your benchmark is I want to be better than I want to be better than myself, I should say, well, then that's easy to do. You just need to make sure that you're growing incrementally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely agree. It's a very good analogy.
So, Jon, thanks so much for joining us today to have that discussion. I hope you guys found it entertaining. I hope you do decide to think about your own 24-hour clone and start looking at your own, sort of practice regimen for airsoft and incorporating some of the concepts we talked about. If you want to have more discussions with us about airsoft, about anything airsoft related, training, gear, guns, whatever you like, please feel free to join us on Discord. We have a really great community there. Lots of different people from all around the world who'd be more than happy to talk to you about, airsoft in all its different shapes and sizes. As well, if you want to support the channel, we do have a new merch store on Threadless. It's stormriders.threadless.com. Have a look. There's lots of designs up there that you can get on shirts, hoodies, mugs, all this kind of stuff. And we do have an olive drab Storm Riders logo t-shirt that is available up there. And there's a sale on Threadless at time of recording. They're just $15. So go have a look at those if you want to support the channel. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.